On Christmas Eve, kindness doesn't announce itself with music or lights. It arrives quietly, usually when the cost is sharp and the room is cold. In a diner that never quite held its heat, a young waitress made a choice she couldn't afford and didn't expect to survive. Naomi Daniels was 20, but her movements carried the caution of someone older. She wiped a table, stacked plates, flexed her fingers once, then kept going. Stopping hurt more than continuing. Outside the window, Christmas lights blinked unevenly, tired and uncertain. Inside, the cold settled along the floor and refused to leave the back booths. Naomi worked nights here, early mornings cleaning offices, afternoons running deliveries when a shift opened. People called it hustle, said it like a compliment. To her, it felt like walking with a stone pressed into her ribs. At home, her father waited. Leona had once been the man neighbors relied on, the one who fixed what wouldn't work. Phones, small engines, the stubborn things people didn't want to replace. Now his lungs failed him slowly, the quiet kind of illness that stole strength without drama. He paused mid-sentence, palm to the wall, pretending he was thinking. One medication mattered more than the rest. Miss it, and everything slipped. The clinic said it plainly, like weather. Naomi didn't save money in a bank. She saved it in a cloudy glass jar under her bed, wrapped in a sock to quiet the sound. Tips. Crumpled bills. Coins she counted at night, careful not to let them clink too loudly. 5 months of saying no. 5 months of passing food that smelled better than anything she ate. By Christmas Eve, the jar finally reached $50. Enough for the medicine. Enough to breathe. She counted it twice on her mattress, lips moving. Then smoothed the bills flat with her palm, like she could eye uncertainty into them. Tomorrow morning, she told herself. First thing, the diner that night was loud in a hollow way. Her manager paced the floor, reminding everyone how lucky they were to have shifts, snapping when smiles slipped. Smile more, he said. People tip for happy. Naomi smiled anyway, not for him. For the dishwasher humming softly. For the older couple sharing pie in silence. For herself, because if she didn't, the night felt heavier. Near 9. The door opened and cold air rolled across the floor like a warning. Conversations dipped. 2 elderly strangers stepped inside and paused, letting the door close behind them. The man's shoulders were slightly hunched, not from age alone but expectation. The woman held his arm, her thumb tracing small circles through his sleeve, a habit worn smooth by years. Their clothes were clean but thin, not homeless, not comfortable. Existing in the space people pretended not to see. The manager noticed immediately. He didn't lower his voice. War full. 3 booths sat empty near the window. Christmas rush, you understand? The woman opened her mouth, closed it. The man nodded once, already turning. Arguing had stopped being useful a long time ago. Someone muttered. Someone laughed too quickly, then went quiet. Naomi felt it before she thought it, that tight pull beneath her ribs. The same feeling she got watching her father cough and wave it off. She stepped forward. It's fine, she said. Not loud. Clear. I'll take them. Her manager snapped his head toward her. No. We're not running a shelter. Naomi didn't look at him. She smiled at the woman and guided them toward a booth near the back where the heat worked better. The woman's eyes widened, like Naomi had handed her something fragile. They sat carefully. The man winced as his knees bent, then smoothed his face. Naomi brought soup first, then bread, then plates that smelled like comfort instead of effort. They ate quickly at first, bracing for interruption, then slowed when they realized no one was watching the door. Thank you, the woman said softly. We'll pay what we can. Naomi nodded like that was normal and turned away, already feeling the weight of tomorrow press closer. Naomi rang in the order under her number and waited for the receipt to print, the machine humming longer than usual. She stared at the paper as it slid out, eyes tracing the total she already knew by heart. Her fingers brushed the pocket where her locker key rested, and the image came fast and sharp. The cloudy jar under her bed, the sock wrapped tight, the bills pressed flat, $50, morning medicine. The weight of it settled in her chest. Her manager passed behind her and stopped. Don't, he said quietly, not a shout, a warning edged thin. I'm not covering that. He moved on before she could answer, leaving the words hanging like a debt already owed. Naomi swallowed. She turned toward the lockers anyway. The metal door squeaked when she pulled it open. She unfolded the sock with care, counted once. Her hand shook, then steadied. She didn't count again. At the register, she slid the bills across the counter. The drawer closed with a dull thud that felt final, like a door she couldn't reopen. She carried the receipt back and placed it on the table. "You're all set," she said, keeping her voice even, like she was talking about the weather. The man looked at her then, really looked. The woman's eyes filled, but she blinked it back. "You didn't have to," she said, soft and careful. Naomi shrugged. "It's Christmas." They stood slowly. The woman reached for Naomi's hand, hesitated, then squeezed it once, brief and steady. "Thank you for seeing us," she said. The words landed heavier than she expected. Naomi watched them walk out into the cold, their shapes swallowed by the dark. She leaned against the counter and took a shallow breath. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A reminder from the clinic. Pick up tomorrow. She turned the screen face down and went back to work. Plates clinked. A fork dropped. Someone asked for more coffee. The room filled again like nothing had happened. That was the hardest part, how quickly the moment vanished. Her manager walked past without a word. Worse than yelling. Naomi wiped the counter twice in the same spot before realizing her hands were shaking. She finished the shift on autopilot. Smiles on cue. Orders repeated back. Every time the bell rang at the window, she flinched, half expecting her name. When the doors finally locked, Naomi chose to walk home. The cold cut through her jacket, sharp and honest. She welcomed it. It kept her awake. At the apartment, the lights were off except for the kitchen. Leonard sat at the table, shoulders rounded, a mug between his hands. He smiled when he saw her, that careful smile meant to protect her from worry. "You eat?" he asked. "Yeah," she said too fast. She set her bag down slowly, like sudden movements might break something. His breathing sounded rougher than yesterday. Not dramatic, just enough to notice. That night, Naomi lay awake counting hours instead of money. Every cough from the next room landed heavy in her chest. She told herself she would figure something out. She always did. Morning came early. She called the clinic before brushing her teeth. Voicemail. She hung up without leaving a message. She already knew what they would say. Work didn't change. Her manager complained about inventory. A regular tipped her $2 and asked if she smiled in her sleep. She smiled anyway. That was the deal. 2 days passed like that. Quiet, uneventful. No cosmic correction. No surprise call. Naomi began to believe the moment had already passed, that kindness sometimes ended exactly where it began. Then, during a slow afternoon, she noticed something on the counter near her station. A basket wrapped neatly, oranges. Bread, a small envelope taped to the side. She looked around, confused. The dishwasher shrugged. "Was here when I came in." Inside the envelope was a card. No name, just a short line in careful handwriting. "Thank you for seeing us." Naomi stood there longer than necessary, fingers pressed into the basket handle. Her manager passed by and scoffed. "Don't get weird about it. Probably church folks." She nodded. Though something felt unfinished, that night Leonard's breathing worsened. Naomi sat beside him, holding his hand, pretending calm. When he finally slept, she rested her forehead against the edge of the bed and closed her eyes. She wondered, just briefly, if she had made the wrong choice. Then she pushed the thought away. A week passed before the bell over the diner door rang in a way Naomi couldn't ignore. Not louder, not urgent, just different, like a note slightly off key. She was pouring coffee when it happened. The stream faltered as she looked up, and for a moment she couldn't move. The couple stood just inside the doorway again. At first, Naomi thought she was imagining the difference, that exhaustion was rearranging details. Then it settled. Their coats fit properly now, not new, not flashy, but tailored with intention. The man's shoes were clean leather, worn carefully, not from neglect. The woman's scarf was wrapped with quiet precision. Even the way they stood had changed, straighter, calmer. Like people who expected to be heard, they didn't rush, they didn't scan the room. They waited. Her manager noticed too. He adjusted his sweater, smoothed his expression, stepped forward with a smile that arrived too quickly. "Table for two?" he asked. They shook their heads. The man spoke, his voice steady, practiced. "We're here to see Naomi." The smile slipped. "She's busy." The woman's eyes moved past him, meeting Naomi's across the room. The same gentle expression from before, but now it carried weight. "We can wait." Her manager hesitated, then snapped his fingers sharply. "Naomi?" "Make it quick." Naomi approached slowly, heart thudding, not from excitement, but confusion. "Hey," she said. The man gestured to an empty booth. "May we?" They sat without waiting for approval. Naomi stood there a moment, unsure. The woman reached into her bag and placed a slim folder on the table. She didn't open it yet. "We owe you clarity," the man said. "Not thanks. That comes later." They spoke plainly. About an organization that had existed longer than people noticed. About clinics funded quietly. Schools rebuilt without names attached. Work done where cameras never followed. They didn't dress it up. They didn't rush. "For months," the woman said, "we went where kindness was inconvenient. Where people thought no one important was watching." She paused. "We were." Naomi frowned. "Why?" The man folded his hands. "Because we're old. Because we have no children. Because we needed to know who would choose compassion when it cost them." Naomi shook her head slightly. "I didn't know any of that. That's why it mattered," the woman said. They slid the folder toward her. Inside were documents stamped paid. Medical invoices, clean and final. Leonard's name printed clearly at the top. Naomi's breath caught. She touched the page like it might disappear. "All current and future treatment. Handled." "I can't." Naomi started. "You already did," the woman said gently. "You paid first." Her manager hovered nearby, pretending to clean, ears straining. When he saw Naomi's face change, his own tightened. "Is there a problem?" he asked. The man looked at him then, assessing. "No," he said. "We're done." Something in his tone stopped further questions. When they stood to leave, the woman squeezed Naomi's hand. "We didn't save you," she said. "We recognized you." They walked out without fanfare. No announcement. No pause. The bell rang softly behind them, and the diner felt suddenly too small for what had just happened. Naomi didn't cry. Not then. She stood still until the room came back into focus. The shift ended, she went home. Leonard's medicine arrived on time. His coughing softened. He slept longer. Some mornings. He even joked again, weak, but real. Naomi enrolled in school quietly. No announcement. No victory lap. She studied like someone protecting a gift, not spending it. Late nights became early mornings. Notes filled cheap notebooks. She still worked shifts. Still rode the bus. The pressure lifted just enough to breathe. Years did not rush after that. They unfolded slowly, deliberately, the way lives usually do when no one is watching for a miracle. Naomi still worked at the diner, though fewer nights as her classes demanded more of her hours. She still cleaned offices on weekends when tuition deadlines crept close. The difference was not comfort. It was space. Space to plan. Space to breathe without counting every inhale. Leonard's health stabilized. His coughing softened into something manageable. No longer stealing whole conversations from him. He slept through most nights. Some mornings, he stood at the stove again, leaning on the counter, insisting on making eggs the way he always had. Naomi watched him from the doorway, pretending not to notice how carefully he moved, grateful for every ordinary moment that had once felt impossible. At school, Naomi kept her head down. She didn't talk about how she got there. She didn't correct assumptions. People filled in their own stories anyway. A waitress going to school. A sick father getting better. Rumors tried to stretch into something larger, but Naomi refused to give them shape. She focused instead on the work, reading until her eyes burned, writing notes until her fingers cramped, learning with the seriousness of someone who knew exactly how fragile opportunity could be. There were days she doubted herself. Days when exhaustion pressed in familiar ways, and she wondered if she belonged there at all. On those days, she remembered the diner's cold floor, the thin coats, the sound of the cash drawer closing. She remembered the choice that had cost her something real. That memory steadied her more than encouragement ever could. Her manager at the diner never apologized. He didn't need to. After that day, his voice softened around her, cautious, as if unsure where authority ended. Naomi noticed and said nothing. Power, she learned, didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shifted quietly and stayed that way. Seasons changed. Holidays came and went without ceremony. Naomi skipped parties without resentment. Focus became habit. Discipline replaced desperation. She learned that stability was built the same way poverty had been, one decision at a time, repeated until it shaped a life. Graduation arrived without warning. One moment she was buried in notes. The next she was standing backstage in a hall, buzzing with voices and raised phones. Her palms were damp, but her heart was calm. When her name was called, she walked forward slowly, scanning the crowd until she found Leonard. He stood with help, clapping too hard, smiling without trying to hide it. Naomi spoke without notes, about a night that looked small at the time, about choosing people when it felt expensive, about kindness not as softness, but as discipline practiced daily. She didn't name anyone. She didn't tell the whole story. She didn't need to. The applause came and went. The moment passed, like all moments do. Later, a clip of her speech circulated briefly. Shared, debated, praised by some, dismissed by others. Naomi watched it once, then turned her phone off. Attention had never been the point. In the back of the hall, the couple sat quietly, no spotlight, no recognition. Just pride. Naomi never chased success. She didn't treat life like something owed to her now. She built it the same way she had served soup on Christmas Eve, steady hands, clear choices, no expectation of return. The world didn't change overnight because of that night. But one life did. Then another. And that was enough. Naomi returned to the diner one winter evening years later, not as an employee, but as someone passing through a familiar place. The walls looked smaller than she remembered. The booths were the same, though the vinyl had cracked a little more with time. The heat still struggled to reach the back. Some things refused to change, no matter who walked through the door. She sat where the couple had once sat, hands wrapped around a mug she didn't need refilled. The memory arrived without pain now. Not sharp, not heavy, just present. She realized something then that had taken years to understand. What changed her life wasn't the money, or the folder, or the opportunity that followed. It was the moment she proved to herself who she was when no one important was watching. Leonard passed quietly one spring morning, years after doctors said he might not last the winter. Naomi was there, holding his hand, listening to his breathing slow. He smiled once, faint and proud, and told her she had done well. Not survived, not managed, done well. That distinction stayed with her. At the service, there were no speeches about hardship or miracles. People talked about Leonard fixing things, radios, lawn mowers, a neighbor's heater in the dead of winter. Naomi listened and realized something else. Kindness had always lived in her home. She hadn't invented it that night. She had simply continued it. Work changed over time. Naomi moved into roles that asked more of her mind than her body. She taught. She mentored. She funded quiet programs that didn't need banners. When people asked why she didn't attach her name to things, she said it distracted from the work. That was true. Recognition made her uneasy. It always had. Once, a student asked her if kindness ever scared her. Naomi thought about it longer than expected. Then she answered honestly, yes, because it costs something. Because it asks you to choose without knowing how the story ends. But fear, she learned, wasn't a reason to stop. It was proof the choice mattered. The couple checked in from time to time, never intrusive, never expectant, sometimes a letter, sometimes a call. They never spoke about tests again. There was no need. What they had been searching for, they had found. Naomi understood that, too. People often think generosity is about saving someone. Most of the time, it's about recognition, seeing someone fully and acting anyway. On another Christmas Eve, Naomi stood outside that same diner and watched strangers pass the window. Some laughing, some tired, some cold. She didn't go in. She didn't need to. The place had already given her what it could. She walked home under blinking lights that still looked a little uncertain. She carried groceries for neighbors who couldn't make the trip themselves. She cooked too much and gave most of it away. Not because it was a holiday. Because she could. Years earlier, she had pressed $50 flat on a counter and closed a drawer that felt final. She hadn't known then that endings were rarely endings. More often, they were doors disguised as losses. Naomi never believed kindness guaranteed reward. She knew better than that. What it guaranteed was alignment, the quiet certainty of living in a way that allowed you to sleep at night. The world remained uneven, cruel in places, indifferent in others. But she moved through it without bitterness, guided by a rule she never wrote down but always followed. Choose people when it costs something. That was how lives changed. Not loudly, not all at once, but steadily, the way warmth slowly reaches the back of a cold room if you're patient enough to wait.